been a big week in politics, and the Liberal Party, I think Angus Taylor's off to a good start, a solid start in the role. I know that the government's been trying to sort of undercut him from the get-go, but resetting the team he's put together, what's your take?
Well, the early days are good, and there were good signs that what he said in his opening speech about what the Liberal Party stood for. I think it's good that he actually essentially apologised for the bad job that they've been doing and try and refocus it on Australians. Let's put it simply, it's the economy, stupid. It's about, you know, people's feeling of whether or not they're wealthy or not, how they feel about electricity prices, how they feel about their way of life. And there's a cultural element in that as well. It's about whether or not they feel their society is being undermined from within. So I think that he's wrapping up those messages nicely together, but it's, you know, day 4, day 5 of what's going to be an extraordinarily long journey. He's got to put in the work. The one concerning thing I would think would be in the rhetoric that we're seeing out of the government's ads and out of the mouths of the Prime Minister and the Treasurer, which is he's just another Liberal, means that the research of the Labor Party shows that the Liberal brand itself is toxic. That's a bad sign for them. It's
a bad sign, and as you say, it's a long way to go. That you can only sort of take the challenge ahead of them, you know, in terms of you're not getting ahead of themselves in the next couple of years to the next election, but they've got the fortnight to plan for the next sitting, and that's the main game now, isn't it, to get across their various responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to look organised. They have to look like they've got some sort of plan of action. And I really can't wait to see the match-up between Tim Wilson and Jim Chalmers. If nothing else, Tim Wilson has a capacity to get under people's skins, which is almost supernatural. So I'm sure he'll be getting under the skin of the Treasurer. Very articulate, very good, I think, pick in that portfolio.
Yeah, well, he also showed enormous success in campaigning up against the franking credits policy of Bill Shorten. Really was front and centre in tearing that down, and has shown that he can do it. He can win a Teal seat back. This guy, if you think about what your opponent would least like, I think this is it. Tim Wilson is the least preferred opponent for Jim Chalmers.
And one of the things that he does, which is rare now in politics, is to put in the work to find the facts that you can then prosecute. Now, we've seen him do that on a number of occasions. And so that's the thing that's been missing. It's been the research that was necessary to actually put the government on the spot, and the discipline necessary in question time, not to try and do a slam dunk, I've got a funny line that I want to get on television, but to start to mount pressure on the government by pointing to all of the flaws. And there are so many there. There are so many opportunities for a disciplined opposition with this government. It's a very big target.
In terms of Angus Taylor's approach, I think the early days are promising, and from Jane Hume as well. As opposition, you don't get to be picky on who you choose to go with. You've got to talk to everyone all the time. And I think so far so good in that sense that he was on FM's radio this morning. Jane Hume's been everywhere. They've got to be everywhere all the time so that people start to hear them. And once we've heard it 10,000 times, punters start to hear their message.
And absolutely going into hostile environments. Now, this is the problem for Angus Taylor. He's not a good communicator, so he actually needs to nail down his message before he attempts to go into hostile environments in the media, which he absolutely should do. And the other thing is they need to settle on their message and learn from Tony Abbott in the way that he had great message discipline. You can complain about a lot of other things, but he had an extraordinary capacity to boil the difficult down into simple. Unfortunately, Angus Taylor's background, where he was a management consultant, means he spent his entire life making simple things complex. He now needs to rewire that, and so does the entire opposition. They need to get a central set of messages, repeat them every single day.
A couple of other appointments that I thought were super interesting. Claire Chandler, I think a really smart move, young woman into finance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think she'll be very good. The other thing too is she's shown that she's tough. We've seen that in some of the things that she's taken on in the past, and you need to be tough in this environment. She's very articulate. She'll be good. Look, Jane Hume didn't have a great last campaign, but I actually think she has an enormous capacity to be a very dangerous weapon for the opposition. She can be very, very good at what she does. And so I think across the board, James Patterson, I think, will be excellent in defence. It'll be interesting to see how Andrew Hastie goes in the finance portfolio, or finance light portfolio that he's always wanted. So the one thing message they need to get through to their team now is, like, they either all hang together now, or as Benjamin Franklin said, they most assuredly will all hang separately. So it is literally do or die.
Yeah, indeed, it's well said. And when I know the Liberals, and this is part of their ethos, is to say you're judged on your merit, your performance. You're chosen not because you're a bloke or a woman. You're judged on your performance. And I understand it, I get it. But in terms of the optics, Jane Hume and Angus Taylor on breakfast TV together is a lot different look to Angus Taylor and Dan Tehan.
No, absolutely. And the other thing too is
Or Ted O'Brien.
Yeah, well, I also do think that Jane Hume's a very good communicator. Like, she had a stumble. She'll learn from that during the last election campaign. That's not necessarily a bad thing now, because she will know now how to conduct herself better in future. And the other thing is just message discipline. Settle on some policies. Work out how you're going to explain to the Australian people, and as you say, do them day in and day out. And don't be frightened by the fact that, of course, the usual suspects will attack whatever immigration policy the coalition comes up with. Let's not forget John Howard was attacked uphill and down dale for "we will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances under which they come." Every country on earth is saying that now. That is now bipartisan policy in Australia, and the rest of the world wants to adopt that language. So, and at the time, you'll recall, that statement was pilloried. So be hard. Make your stand. It's about numbers, and it's also about values, and don't deviate from
And for the government, its response on the ISIS brides, as they're called, I think is going to be really important. The Prime Minister says, you make your bed, you lie in it. That's what his mother would have said back in the day. That's the message. He's showing very little sympathy for those individuals, and I think most Australia would agree with him. The question is, will they end up back here, though?
Most likely, you would think so. And the government will have to assist them, right? If they've got passports, the federal government is helping them in some way, shape or form, because you can't get a passport from anyone else, as far as I can understand, Kieran. So there will be a process that's involved in that. Now, there may not be money going directly, but there'll be conversations being had about that. Extremely difficult circumstances.
There's very little sympathy for them from the community.
The women that went there knew at the time that they left that they were going to marry some of the worst murderers on earth. They advertised that around the world. That was part of their stick. They wanted to terrify the world about the level of medieval brutality that they had. Now, I have some sympathy for the children because they were born into a circumstance which they did not choose. But there is no sympathy at all for those women, as far as I'm concerned. And there'll be none in the Australian community. The Prime Minister knows that.
Particularly off the events of recent months.
And look, again, there is an underlying question here, and it is one for our Muslim brothers and sisters, which is there is a problem inside that community. And I'm not talking about the fact that you ban Muslim immigration or that the Muslim Australian isn't as much an Australian as anybody else. But if they cannot come to terms with the fact that there is a cancer inside their community, and as Australians, it is their job to recognise that, to articulate that, and to root that out. That is an Australian project which we should all help with, but it is incumbent now on the Muslim community of Australia to accept that as a reality and do something about it.
Chris Uhlmann, great to see you. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks, mate.